I'm looking at a picture of Gosport in the 1940s, Avenue Road after the bombing. The street is choked with rubble and fallen timber from the ruined houses. As a child a few years later, the rubble had gone, but the bomb sites remained. Gaps between the terraces of houses where people died. But I assumed all towns consisted of bomb sites. Exciting places of mounds, hollows, heaps, piles of brick, fennel, rosebay willow herb, known better as bomb site weed, and buddleia, the butterfly tree. 80 years later, the gaps have been plugged, so the street is once again 2 straight lines of terraced houses. The house where I was born, 2 up, 2 down in Sage Green, was where my mother spent 3 days in labour with me in the front bedroom. It looks unchanged from outside. Not sure why, but I've yet to pluck up the courage to knock on the door and ask to look inside. My brother, 3 years older, was born in Barrow-in-Furness and came to Gosport with my parents when he was 2. Asked by the new neighbours where he came from, he was reported to have replied with the broad Barrow accent he kept into his teens, "I don't rightly know." The grubby alleyway at the back, the house looks unchanged. The high garden wall I fell off concussing myself. The gate I was scared to go out of for fear of dogs, and the little car backing noisily out of a neighbour's garage. Are vivid memories. In those days, I was afraid of something for much of every day. I found Journey into Space on the BBC Home Service terrifying, even though there were only early synthetic sounds. I know the house has changed, though. I reckon the outside disinfectant-smelling lavatory with the hard Izal toilet paper has gone, and the kitchen sink has hot water now as well as the single cold tap in my day. I bet there's no galvanised bath hanging on the wall and no copper where water was heated for the weekly bath in front of the fire, or the lingering, tarry smell of poisonous coal gas. Mr. Hughes's grocery shop was on the next corner. It had the smell of everything good. Food came in bulk. Sugar in sacks, butter in barrels, raisins in kegs, cheese in the truckle, bacon from the flitch, and flour sieved for weevils. It was all shovelled, patted and cut into portions and wrapped in brown paper or blue paper bags. When I was older, Mr. Hughes gave me defunct clocks and watches to mend. I successfully dismantled them all, but never put any of them back together again. Food rationing continued into the 1950s. Coupons came in books and were cut out with scissors. My mother presented her tokens for national orange juice and dried milk somewhere near Avenue Road. Dried egg made what seemed to me then a delicious version of scrambled eggs, though it was with coffee, ersatz and trademarked Camp came in a square bottle. The picture on the front was of a kilted Highland officer, seated with his brown shikar standing respectfully behind. Meat was scarce, but occasionally Mr. Bulpit, the butcher, displayed chunks of whale meat which wasn't rationed. Deep red and close-grained as oak, I didn't see it again until a few years ago in Norway. We went to the Methodist Church and Sunday School in Stoke Road. It had the smell of furniture polish and devoutness, and occupied a great deal of our lives, not just on Sundays, but for church outings and socials. There was plenty to do that was more interesting than playing Patience, Snap, or Can You Go? Sunday school picnics were on Saturdays, of course, in the lovely town parks, Stanley, Gosport and Walpole. It was during a Sunday school picnic in Walpole Park that I acquired a lifelong loathing of what dogs leave behind. It was a couple of 100 yards or so to Newtown School, where I went from the age of 5 to 7. Even though my mother came with me, I was paralysed by embarrassment on my first day and cried a lot. But I played in the sand tray. The smell has stayed with me. I was embarrassed about something almost every day afterwards. Spelling. I couldn't tell the difference between wood, as in timber, and wood, as in would if I could. Neville Benfield passing wind during prayers. Adding up. The big girl, so grown up at 7, turning cartwheels in the playground, with their skirts tucked into their knickers. I hated having to raise my hand to go out to the creosoted toilets for a pee. Miss Gunston spat as she spoke, and Miss Meeby had her white hair in a bun like my grandmother. But they loved us. Despite fearing many things and being embarrassed about a lot, I was fortunate to have been born with a sunny disposition, which later turned into optimism and happiness. It meant I couldn't take life too seriously, and I still can't. I smiled constantly and joked about serious things. This often led to trouble. At school, I couldn't wipe that grin off my face. It was my face. 70 years later, I've been living in Gosport again for around 15 years, drawn here by admiration for this town of my birth. Having survived the Nazi onslaught, it almost sank under the economic depressions of the 90s and the noughties. A hammer blow was the closure of most of the naval and shipbuilding services in the dockyard, which employed much of Gosport's working population, including my father. When I returned, the once busy High Street was full of tumbleweed, though the ghosts of former commerce can be seen on every corner. Much has changed, but little has changed. Newtown School is now a smart modern building by the cycle path on the route of the railway that still carried freight into the 1960s. A little further away on Daisy Lane is Leesland School. Headmaster Mr. Washington, headmistress Miss Smith when I went there from 7 to 11. A while later, my brother was an inspirational teacher at Leesland, a kind of piper who could lead a class of children to imagine and do virtually anything. On Ascension Day, we all trooped to St. Mary's Church in Alverstoke for the Anglican service, and I can still recite the litany. The lectern was a great brass eagle, probably stolen or sold during an antiques craze. The biggest changes are not in the town, but in my conception of the town. First, I always believed it was full of hills, confused probably by Anne's Hill, which is not actually a real hill, but a disused railway bridge. In fact, the town is low-lying and dead flat, though no longer marshy, polluted and mosquito-ridden. As a child, I knew that the town was oriented north-south. It's actually a peninsula with inlets, all of which run east-west, and at high tide an aerial view makes it obvious that the town is as watery as Venice. The sun still rises and sets at the end of each of the three main parallel streets, and the High Street is still bisected by North Cross Street and South Cross Street. It's been surprisingly hard to reorient my perceptions after 60 years.